we're briefly cutting live to the Global Investors Meeting 2022 that is being hosted in the state of Karnataka.
Kapil.
Thanks. Possibly, the whole vision of 111 is that India would be, for the first time, a net energy exporter. So we feel and demonstrate that India could be the #1 exporter of green hydrogen in next 1 decade, supplying to the world green hydrogen at $1 per kg. So that's how the vision of 111 was arrived at. Particularly if you talk of green hydrogen, at this moment also country consumes 6 to 7 million metric tons of hydrogen, which is largely grey. And people, even at the government of India, the target is that by 2030 we would be around 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen by 2030. We being producer and consumer of hydrogen ourselves have a vision that if we at Reliance want to be net zero by 2035, one of the key initiatives would be to figure out how do we decarbonize and take charge and control of our own GHG emissions and inventories. So the major step towards that, the good part towards the green hydrogen vision and mission, what the country is working. So February this year, there was a hydrogen policy by Government of India which was announced, and the hydrogen mission is probably at the verge of coming, which would, for the first time, even as part of policy, the country announced that we would be providing banking for projects and ISTS waiver for projects which are done before June 2025. And this is a very, very bold step, I would say. Even some of those developed countries haven't provided such an incentive to bank the renewable power and then use it for green hydrogen production. So that's a very, very progressive step towards announcing that policy. The second part of the mission, which would now be working more towards the demand creation, which was possibly missing in the whole policy which was announced in Feb, would now be coming, which would then derive for certain industries as to what green hydrogen compliance obligation could be. For the first time, I would see where we are, rest of the world is also there. So, we are no more going to be a follower. We have all the chance to become a leader in an industry which is just beginning. So there is no other country which is far ahead compared to us if we talk of green hydrogen, either in production, storage, transportation, or possibly in the downstream application. So everywhere from upstream, midstream, downstream, we have the whole system to look at in a very holistic way as in country, have a chance to put our global footprint ahead. In fact, I would say possibly many of the EU have been looking for around 10 million metric tons of imports. Many other countries would be looking at India. And why I say India has a chance and a benefit is because the majority of cost towards production of green hydrogen is the cost of renewable power. Now, this country has been working towards some of the lowest LCOEs by now already. So we have an ecosystem for large-scale renewable power plant. We have the manpower for large-scale, skilled manpower to execute those large-scale renewable power plant. We have the know-how is already produced for renewable and the hydrocarbon or the petrochem side of it. So this green hydrogen is in combination of both these things, and that is present in India already as a know-how and knowledge base. And at the same time, there is good amount of funding which is already available for any project which is touching climate change and impact. So, from all aspects, this provides us an opportunity compared to land, irradiation, and of course wind, and also the manpower and sources of funding. So probably we have all possible elements. To your question on how do we go towards that $1 thing, so as I said, one of the key elements to that would be how do we bring down the cost of renewable power, because that constitutes 60–70% in the whole hydrogen production chain. So how do we reduce the cost of renewable power? How do we make it more round-the-clock power from where it is intermittent power? Then the second aspect of it all would be relating to the electrolyzer. So how do we improve efficiencies of electrolyzers? How do we improve the lifetime what is there for the electrolyzer? How do we bring down the capex for electrolyzers? And how do we make sure that they are supplied with the full load hours? So is it possibly in combination of solar wind hybrid, possibly in combination of solar wind plus storage and offshore wind as well? So we are able to provide an electrolyzer as much round the clock power as possible. And then the next point, which I also said, would be the weighted average cost of capital. As we do more pilot projects, this would come and project finance would be simple. So keeping all these elements is where this kind of a vision would be quite possible for the country.
Thank you, Kapil. I think probably many in the audience are wondering, you keep hearing very often the story of hydrogen in the newspapers. You're probably wondering, what is it all about? It seems to be going back to the basics in some way, right? Hydrogen is a fuel that has been used in the past, but not in large enough quantities. As Kapil explained, it's basically taking electricity through water, splitting it, creating hydrogen and oxygen, so clean fuel. And as you know, India today imports more than 85% of the oil that it needs and 50% of the gas that we consume. So hydrogen is being seen as the fuel that will replace the oil and the gas eventually in many end applications. And I'll quickly sort of use that as a segue to come to Adlan here, who comes from Petronas, perspective from, well, a multinational perspective. Not that Reliance is not multinational, but you guys are obviously looking at the possibility of what hydrogen can deliver and what risks it poses to your conventional business, Adlan. And I also know that you are investing potentially in a, in Mangalore, right, in a hydrogen-based project. So what do you see as the role of alternative fuels like hydrogen in industry? Is it hype? Do you feel, it's too early to board that bus? Because everybody, I live in Delhi, and now the discussion's entirely shifted to hydrogen, right? It's like, let's forget about everything else, nat gas, we'll forget about it. Hydrogen is what we want to pursue. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much. Maybe a bit of context. I think we were first approached about producing green hydrogen, green ammonia by our Japanese LNG buyers. I think this was in 2017, 2018. I think Japan, they're among the first few countries who came up with a policy to reduce carbon reduction by using hydrogen.